How do we begin to solve some of the major problems of our time? Things like climate change or social isolation, the systemic inequity that we've come to accept. How can we begin to protect ourselves with each other and step into a new way of seeing, changing our very approach to problem solving, and to step out of this entrenched system that we find ourselves conditioned into? What's been tried before isn't working. And if there was ever a time to switch up our tactics, that time is upon us. My name is Alex Kennedy, and in this video I'm going to talk a bit about my own backstory and what my beliefs and intentions are, as well as give an overview of my theory of change and how I believe we can begin on this path today. So first off, let me introduce myself a little bit and give you a bit of a history of how I got to where I am right now. My background is in animation and post-production. I used to work in the visual effects industry on films, TV, and commercials, and I freelanced across a bunch of different studios in London. And during this time, I would often hear stories of other people that were in the cities, some of their experiences, their dreams, their intentions, and how they saw these fitting into their own environment and lifestyle. One of the things that was quite unique to this time was I was able to intake a huge amount of media and audio content while I was working, seeing as it's quite a visual job. And this would allow me to really feed my curiosity in subjects such as philosophy or system change, tech, startups, and culture. And what I work on now is an amalgamation of all of the things I learned and experienced up until this point. And I believe that this project is ripe for the time that we live in at the moment. It combines trends in remote work, co-living, blockchain, and the systems that can be created within their combination. What I've been developing over the last 3 years is a new model of community-driven network that brings freedom, support, and purpose to those who contribute to the mission or to each other or to the projects that are developed within it. The intention is to create a microeconomic system from a network of trust. Everyone essentially stakes for everyone else in the network, allowing for this sharing and support that's spread across our social graph. My belief is that a gifting economy can be protected and integrated within a dominant market system in a way that can improve a more generative, efficient, and effective means of production and organization, providing autonomy, flexibility, and a kind of social sovereignty that I don't feel there are many examples of today. The most significant potential innovation that I see in this area is within the realm of culture and mindset. There's a strong conditioning to operate from a scarcity and ego-based approach when creating something with others or operating outside of traditional dominance hierarchies. My belief is that by designing and experimenting with the environment in which we create, we can explore the experience of fundamental coordination on a social level. And to me, this is really one of the kind of meta problems that exists out there, is how do we actually work together? How do we form into teams and projects and help each other out, basically? And seeing as this can be applied in so many different contexts, and also especially within the realms of purpose-driven work, I think there is a real need for innovation in this area to be able to fundamentally allow us to work together better and be able to form new teams and organizations in more flexible and fluid ways. So now that I've given you a bit of a backstory around me and some of my intentions, let me go a bit deeper into my theory of change. What I am suggesting here, in its most fundamental form, is the development of a space from which may emerge a new operating system of society. So to make this a bit more digestible, I've broken it into the sort of deeper problem solution space and the more sort of current problem solution space. So let's start off in the deep end. If we're going to be solving some of the major social problems of our time, we're going to really need to start thinking in systems. As we begin to see this necessary shift of work that's orientated towards purpose, we're going to need to find better ways of combining our efforts and defining what's most important or in need of resources. These decisions might not easily be decided by the market or from traditional means of funding that will usually require, clear accountability or measurable output, which kind of limits the effects that it can have to these parameter level changes, like things that are just kind of tweaking the parts here and there, whereas they might not be getting to the kind of systemic issues that are causing these symptoms. Questions that I believe we should be asking here are, what are the leverage points for creating meaningful system change? How can we better approach the landscape of problem solving itself? And what are the blockers in ourselves, the assumptions that we hold on to, or even our very way of seeing the world? There's this great article by Donella Meadows, who's a systems theorist, and she proposes that the greatest leverage point for system change is held at the level of culture. Considering this, it does make me wonder how many projects are actually tackling systemic issues through this lens, and also if they're likely to receive any near-term support when working on something as immeasurable as culture. And my question really is that if we only have this decade to make the radical shifts that we need to, can we really afford to not be working at these points of greater leverage? What I'm essentially proposing is a place to start around this point of leverage, a place to kind of direct energy and be able to start experimenting in that area. Essentially a place to allow for new cultural behaviors to emerge, fed with the best in global insight and combined with a creative catalyst surrounding this experimentation to bring that social innovation to the world. And I believe to do this, we need to seek out and work on 5 main areas. For now, I've titled these as awareness, decision, practice, production, and replication. Let me go through each one and break them down. So there's awareness, which is an insight into the problem landscape and a way of bringing some of the global wisdom around how to even start approaching this. Then there's decision, the conversation and governance to define the kind of priorities, the attention, where we should be directing our experimentations within this space. And then there's the practice and experimentation. This is where the testing different configurations of people, of environments, and different rituals or practices to basically build insight and sovereignty and new ways of seeing. Then there's production and systemization. This is essentially creating the content and narratives that express the mindsets or discoveries or insight from within this space. And finally, there's replication and iteration. This almost kind of feeds back into the awareness because you have to have an awareness of what it is that you're doing and documentation of this process and basically present this social technology in a way that can make it replicatable. The mission is essentially to create a superior way of communicating and coordinating through seeking to understand our cultural narratives and develop new memes for the future. So the role of creatives in this space is essentially to embody the culture and express it through art and poetry and content and narrative. By sharing equipment and resources and ideas and marketing channels, they can be making the biggest impact possible. Okay, so now let's move into the current problem solution space. So the way I see it at the moment, there's 3 main problems that I think this can tackle in the near term. These are loneliness and disconnection, the need for economic resiliency, and also the capacity to be working on the projects that are really meaningful in this time. So first off, the problem of loneliness. Now, I don't think I really need to go over this one too much based on the recent events, but I think it's clear that even before the pandemic, there was this loneliness epidemic that many would talk about. And I think obviously now we are more isolated and alone than ever. It begs the question of how are we going to be bringing ourselves back from this? People were lonely in cities. And if we can create other options, people will undoubtedly take them. This pandemic has taught us the importance of close relationships and an appreciation for nature while bringing into question the value of cities. And given all of the adaptations towards the online world, it's now possible to bring the benefits of cities to more remote and decentralized alternatives. Second problem space is the need for economic resiliency. Given what's been going on with our economy, I'm sure there are many who are really feeling the need for support, and either mentally or financially. And I think we've all seen what's missing in having this scarcity, individualistic and market-driven approach to serving needs. I would like to explore with this initiative and those who participate with it new forms of social resiliency in the ways of us sharing risks, being aware of each other's needs, building influence in the world, or generating a kind of self-protection through a commitment to each other. It can be started very simply just by facilitating that reciprocity between people. In physical spaces, this will be a lot easier to bring about than online, but with innovations in tech and a deeper understanding of the limiting stories around collaboration, my belief is that today, gifting economies can scale. If we can begin to experiment with the ultimate environment for cultural exploration and creativity, then we may play our part within this cultural renaissance that I believe we will be witnessing coming out of this pandemic. The proposal is to curate and set the space with the right people, information, and wisdom needed for capturing insights or discoveries. This will begin with the experimentation around personality dynamics. Through a series of online events, participants will be curated into physical clusters where they can begin to build relationships and collaborate together in small ways. The initial houses will be short-term, between 1 to 3 months, but the aim is to provide a pathway for those looking for longer-term community. So that is an overview of where I see this project fitting into a larger strategy around cultural and narrative change. It's essentially a culture lab meets creator co-living. Please do share this with anyone you think might be interested in this, because I am always looking to collaborate or partner with other people that are working in this kind of space. And do feel free to reach out to me personally if there's any suggestions or advice that you might want to give. Thank you again for watching. I'm sorry if this video was a little bit dry. I will try and throw in a bit more humor and stuff in future ones, but for now, hopefully it gives you a bit of an insight into my thinking. And also, if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next one.